The sun never sets on the British Empire they used to boast, and in the heart of that empire, shimmering like a prize, lay India. The jewel in the crown, they called it, a land of immense riches, ancient wisdom, and a people ripe for the civilizing touch of the British. But this jewel came at a price paid in the coin of exploitation, cultural disruption, and the suppression of freedom. This is the story of how a trading venture morphed into an empire, and how a subjugated people rose to reclaim their destiny. The tale begins long before the Raj, with the arrival of the East India Company in the early 17th century. Seeking spices, textiles, and the promise of lucrative trade, they established footholds, securing trading rights from the Mughal emperors. Little did anyone foresee the seismic shift in power that would follow, transforming a company of merchants into the rulers of a subcontinent. The East India Company arrived on Indian shores not as conquerors, but as supplicants, seeking the favor of the mighty Mughal emperors. They came bearing gifts, establishing trading posts, and gradually weaving themselves into the fabric of Indian commerce. Through shrewd negotiation, cunning alliances, and the exploitation of local rivalries, they secured trading privileges and expanded their influence. However, the company's ambitions soon outstripped its mercantile origins. The weakening Mughal Empire presented an opportunity too tempting to resist. With its own private army, bolstered by local recruits known as sepoys, the company began to assert military dominance. The Battle of Plassey in 1757, a pivotal victory against the Nawab of Bengal, marked a turning point. It cemented the company's grip on Bengal, a region of immense wealth and strategic importance, paving the way for their transformation from merchants to masters. With the Sepoy Mutiny of 1857, a bloody uprising that shook the foundations of British rule, the era of the East India Company came to an end. The British Crown took direct control, ushering in the Raj, a period of formal imperial rule that would last for nearly a century. This transition saw the systematic dismantling of local governance structures and the imposition of British laws and administration. Central to the Raj's strategy was the policy of divide and rule. The British exploited existing religious, caste, and regional divisions within Indian society, pitting communities against each other to weaken any potential for united opposition. This policy, coupled with the systematic suppression of dissent, allowed a relatively small number of British administrators to control a vast and diverse population. Underpinning British rule was a system of economic exploitation. India was transformed into a captive market for British manufactured goods, while its own industries, particularly textiles, were systematically dismantled. Raw materials were siphoned off to fuel the engines of the Industrial Revolution, leaving India impoverished and dependent. The history of British rule in India is punctuated by acts of resistance, both small and large, that challenged the very notion of colonial authority. The Sepoy Mutiny of 1857, sparked by the controversial introduction of new rifle cartridges greased with animal fat, was a watershed moment. Though brutally suppressed, the mutiny exposed the vulnerabilities of British rule and ignited the flames of nationalism that would eventually consume it. The early 20th century witnessed a surge in nationalist sentiment, fueled by growing resentment against British policies and the desire for self-rule. The Indian National Congress, founded in 1885, emerged as a leading voice for reform and independence. The Jallianwala Bagh massacre of 1919, where British troops opened fire on unarmed civilians gathered for a peaceful protest, proved to be a turning point. The massacre, a chilling display of colonial brutality, sent shockwaves through India and beyond. It radicalized a generation, turning moderates into nationalists and solidifying the demand for complete independence. The massacre became a potent symbol of British oppression, etched into the collective memory of a nation determined to break free. The saga of British rule in India is interwoven with the lives of individuals who left an enduring mark on this complex history. Queen Victoria, Empress of India, though a distant figure, embodied the might and majesty of the British Empire. Her reign, coinciding with the heyday of the Raj, saw India drawn further into the imperial fold. In stark contrast stood Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, the Mahatma, who emerged as the guiding light of India's struggle for independence. Espousing non-violent resistance, Gandhi mobilized millions in a mass movement that challenged the very foundations of British rule. His message of satyagraha, or truth force, resonated with the masses, inspiring acts of civil disobedience that shook the foundations of the Raj. Alongside Gandhi stood Jawaharlal Nehru, a towering figure in the Indian nationalist movement. A staunch advocate for secularism and democracy, Nehru played a pivotal role in shaping the political landscape of independent India. As India's first Prime Minister, he laid the foundations for a modern, independent nation, grappling with the legacy of colonialism. The British Raj left an indelible mark on every facet of Indian life, a legacy marked by both progress and plunder. The introduction of railways, though primarily designed to serve British economic interests, connected distant corners of the subcontinent, facilitating trade and communication. The establishment of universities and colleges, though modelled after British institutions, fostered a new generation of intellectuals and nationalists. However, this veneer of progress masked a darker reality. The Raj's policies, designed to benefit the British economy, left India impoverished and its industries in ruins. The forced cultivation of cash crops like indigo and opium led to widespread agrarian distress and famine. The Bengal famine of 1943, a horrific tragedy that claimed millions of lives, stands as a stark reminder of the Raj's callous indifference to the plight of ordinary Indians. The social fabric of India was also irrevocably altered. The introduction of Western education and values, while empowering some, created a cultural chasm within Indian society. The English language, though a tool of colonial administration, became a lingua franca, connecting Indians across linguistic and regional divides. The Second World War proved to be a turning point in the struggle for Indian independence. India's forced participation in the war, coupled with the weakening of the British Empire, created a climate ripe for change. Gandhi's call for the Quit India movement in 1942, a mass civil disobedience campaign demanding immediate independence, pushed the British to the negotiating table. The movement, though met with brutal repression, demonstrated the unwavering resolve of the Indian people. The British, exhausted by war and facing mounting pressure both domestically and internationally, realized that their days in India were numbered. The stage was set for a momentous transfer of power, though not without its share of tragedy. On August 15, 1947, India finally shook off the shackles of colonial rule and emerged as an independent nation. This historic moment, however, was marred by the horrors of partition, as the subcontinent was divided along religious lines, leading to widespread violence and displacement. The legacy of British rule continued to cast a long shadow, shaping the destiny of the newly independent nations of India and Pakistan.